The blinding flash of news cameras was a symphony to Officer Jake Riley. At 29, he stood at the podium in the main briefing room of the 17th Precinct, a newly minted hero. His uniform was crisp. His jaw was set with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, and the city's media hung on his every word. Beside him, Police Chief Miller beamed, his hand resting on Jake's shoulder in a gesture of paternal pride. Jake had just orchestrated the biggest bust in the city's history. He had single-handedly taken down a heavily armed, military-grade weapons trafficking ring operating out of the city's abandoned dock. The evidence was overwhelming. A warehouse filled with crates of assault rifles, grenade launchers, and enough C4 to level a city block. ... And thanks to the diligent work of our department, Jake was saying, his voice resonating with practiced humility, these weapons of war are off our streets, and a dangerous syndicate has been dismantled before it could poison our community. He was on top of the world. He could already see the headlines, the commendations, the promotion to detective he had coveted for so long. He was the hero cop who had saved the city. It was in that perfect, triumphant moment that the heavy doors to the briefing room crashed open. The sound was like a thunderclap, silencing the room instantly. 2 squads of military police in full combat gear stormed in, their movements precise, economical, and utterly terrifying. They were not city cops. They were soldiers, their faces hard as granite, their M4 rifles held at a low ready. They parted the sea of shocked reporters, their boots making no sound on the polished floor. Leading them was a master sergeant, a man whose face seemed to be carved from stone, his uniform adorned with the insignia of the Army's Criminal Investigation Division. He walked directly to the podium, ignoring the sputtering police chief, his eyes locked on Jake. The master sergeant stopped inches from him. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. His presence alone sucked all the air out of the room. "Officer Jake Riley," the soldier asked, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Yes," Jake managed to say, his own confidence suddenly feeling fragile, hollow. The master sergeant held up a pair of military-grade restraints. "By order of the United States Department of Defense, under the authority of Title 10, Section 333 of the U.S. Code," he said, his voice cold and final, "you are being taken into federal custody for actions resulting in a catastrophic breach of national security." The narrator's voice begins here, a chilling whisper that cuts through the chaos. He was the city's hero, the cop who had single-handedly stopped an army of criminals. But as the cold steel of military handcuffs clicked around his wrists in front of the world, he had no idea what he had truly done. He hadn't arrested criminals. He had arrested the Ghosts, a top-secret Delta Force unit, in the middle of a sting operation to catch a traitor selling secrets that could get thousands of Americans killed. He thought he was a hero. The army was about to put him in a cage for being the biggest fool in their entire war. The chain of events that led a hero cop to be shackled by his own country's army began 2 weeks earlier with a whisper. The whisper came from a low-level informant, a nervous junkie who told Jake about a massive shipment of illegal weapons moving through the old shipyard. For any other cop, it would have been a tip to be passed up the chain, a case for a federal task force. But Jake Riley was not any other cop. He was ambitious, a lone wolf who believed that glory was something you seized, not something you waited for. He saw this as his golden ticket, his chance to leapfrog over the slow grind of promotions. He decided to run the investigation himself, off the books. He spent his nights conducting surveillance, his days poring over shipping manifests, fueled by coffee and a burning desire to prove himself. He saw a pattern, a series of shell corporations and ghost shipments, all leading to one abandoned warehouse, Pier 4. He never once thought to contact the FBI or the ATF. This was his bust, his glory. That was his first and most critical mistake. On the night of the raid, he didn't call for SWAT. He assembled a small team of patrol officers he trusted, feeding them a story about a mid-level drug bust. He wanted the element of surprise, and he wanted the credit to be his and his alone. When they breached the warehouse, it was exactly as his informant had described, but 100 times more intense. The place was a fortress, filled with men who moved with the chilling efficiency of trained soldiers. The firefight was short, brutal, and miraculously one-sided. Jake's team, through sheer luck and surprise, managed to subdue the 5 men inside without any major injuries. As they cuffed the suspects, Jake felt a surge of pure adrenaline. He had done it. The men were hard, silent, and built like brick walls. They refused to speak, their eyes holding a cold, disciplined fury that Jake mistook for criminal arrogance. In the center of the warehouse were the crates, dozens of them, filled with military hardware so advanced it made the hair on his arms stand up. He had taken down a major league operation. He was a hero. He paraded the silent, stone-faced suspects in front of the media. He stood proudly beside the seized weapons, and he soaked in the adoration of a grateful city. He was so blinded by the spotlight that he never once questioned why these supposed arms dealers had allowed themselves to be captured or why their discipline seemed to surpass that of any criminal he had ever encountered. The truth was a world away from Jake's heroic fantasy. The 5 men he had arrested were the members of Ghost Unit, a Tier 1 Delta Force team operating under the direct command of the Joint Special Operations Command. The warehouse was not a criminal den. It was a stage. The weapons were not being sold. They were bait in a highly sensitive sting operation designed to catch a high-ranking government official who was selling classified weapons technology to a hostile foreign power. The target of the sting, a man known only as the broker, was a ghost in the intelligence community, a traitor who had been leaking secrets for years, resulting in the deaths of American agents and soldiers overseas. After months of painstaking work, Ghost Unit had finally arranged a buy. The broker was due to arrive at that warehouse in less than an hour to inspect the stolen weapons before finalizing the transfer of funds and data. When Jake Riley and his team of beat cops crashed the party, they didn't just blow the sting, they detonated it. The broker, who was monitoring the warehouse from a distance, saw the police activity and vanished back into the shadows, taking his secrets with him. The entire multi-million-dollar, multi-agency operation to catch a traitor who was actively endangering national security was annihilated in an instant by a glory-seeking patrolman. The aftermath within the intelligence community was cataclysmic. The army couldn't just explain the situation to the local police. The very existence of Ghost Unit was classified. The nature of their mission was a matter of grave national security. They couldn't reveal that a high-level traitor was still at large, as it would cause a panic and compromise other ongoing operations. So, they did what the military does best. They contained the problem. And the problem was Officer Jake Riley. The military transport that took Jake from the precinct was a black, windowless vehicle. He was hooded and flown to a location he would never be able to identify, a black site somewhere in the American desert. His badge, his gun, and his rights had been stripped away at the precinct door. His cell was a simple concrete box. There was a cot, a toilet, and a single, unblinking camera in the corner. For 2 days, he was left in complete isolation, the silence broken only by the sound of his own frantic thoughts. His heroic narrative had crumbled, replaced by a terrifying, suffocating confusion. On the 3rd day, the door opened. A man in a simple, unmarked uniform entered. He was not a soldier in combat gear. He was an interrogator, an intelligence officer from the Defense Intelligence Agency. His name was Mr. Jones, and his eyes were devoid of any emotion. Officer Riley Jones began, his voice calm and quiet. "You are in a great deal of trouble. You can't do this." Jake blurted out, the words sounding weak even to his own ears. "I arrested armed felons. I did my job." "No," Officer Riley Jones said, placing a thin file on the small table between them. "You did not do your job. Your job, when faced with a potential domestic terrorism threat involving military-grade hardware, was to contact the FBI. It was to coordinate with federal authorities. Instead, you decided to play hero. You wanted the headline. Now, let me show you the headline you actually wrote." He opened the file. The first picture he showed Jake was of a young soldier, smiling, with his wife and 2 small children. "This is Sergeant First Class Marcus Cole," Jones said. He was part of an intelligence team in North Africa. 2 weeks ago, his unit was ambushed and wiped out. The enemy knew their exact location, their numbers, their equipment. The intelligence that led to their deaths was sold by the man you were supposed to be helping us catch. The man you let escape. He slid another photo across the table. It was a satellite image of a chemical weapons facility in a hostile nation. "This is where the technology the broker is selling is ending up," Jones continued, his voice still unnervingly calm. "He is not just selling guns, Officer Riley. He is selling the targeting systems for our drones, the encryption codes for our satellites, the chemical composition of our body armor. He is selling out the lives of every American soldier and citizen for profit. Your big bust didn't just blow a sting operation. It handed our enemies a victory that will cost American lives for years to come." Jake stared at the photos, his blood turning to ice. The weight of what he had done, the sheer, catastrophic scale of his arrogant mistake, crashed down on him. He wasn't a hero. He was a fool, a useful idiot whose ambition had been wielded as a weapon against his own country. What happens to me now?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. "That is a very good question," Jones said, closing the file. "We cannot charge you in a public court. The trial would expose the existence of Ghost Unit, the identity of the broker, and the full extent of the damage you have caused. We cannot let you go. You are now a walking, talking national security risk. Your name, your face, it's all tied to this disaster." He stood up to leave. "You wanted to be a hero, Officer Riley. You wanted to make a name for yourself. Well, you have. Within these walls, you will be the textbook example of what happens when a local cop's ego gets in the way of national security. You will be a ghost, just like the men you arrested." Jake Riley was never seen again by the outside world. The official story released to the media was that he had been placed in federal protective custody as a key witness in an ongoing national security investigation. His name faded from the headlines, another forgotten hero in a city that quickly moved on. He spent the rest of his days in that concrete box, a prisoner of his own ambition. He was not a criminal, not a traitor, but a casualty of a war he never even knew he was fighting. He had arrested the wrong men at the wrong time, and in doing so, had become a liability that the United States Army could not afford to set free. He had learned the hardest lesson a man with a badge can learn. There is a profound and dangerous difference between keeping the peace and waging a war, and he had mistaken one for the other.